In our previous video, I walked through how I am intentional about my content and language objectives, and also one way that I ensure my content concepts are appropriate for my students' age and educational background. In this video, my focus is on the fourth feature of lesson preparation, identifying supplementary materials. There are a lot of reasons why I regularly consider using and collecting supplementary materials to use with my teaching. First, the author of my textbook does not personally know my students. Because I take time to get to know my students on a personal and educational level, I'm better able to connect lessons to their unique lives. I also know that there's more than just visual and auditory ways to interact with content. I try to regularly look for kinesthetic and tactile materials whenever possible. Last, I also know that the more supplementary materials I add to my lessons, the more my students, and myself included, engage in the lesson. When I personalize lessons, I feel a personal connection to the teaching, and students feel a personal connection to the learning. Let's take a look at my lesson plan so we can see what changes have been made. I know that I already altered my lesson plan to include a content check to ensure my content is appropriate for my students' background. I anticipate that my students will not have a large background with this concept, as their exposure in schools with students with physical disabilities is pretty limited. I've added a supplementary video to watch as a class in case my students have very limited exposure to other kids with physical disabilities. By helping them gain more background knowledge on the topic, I'm setting students up for success with their content and language objectives. Let me show you where I found this video to help supplement our lesson. One amazing resource I like to use when supplementing in my classroom is Discovery Education. You can find the link Discovery Education on your Clever page if you navigate to the district page. Here I am at Discovery Ed. I'm going to go ahead and use the search bar to search for what I'm looking for. Notice all the different results that came up. Depending on what I'm looking for, I can filter through different types of media. I'm specifically looking for a video. Now, my purpose of this video is to show exposure to my students of other students with cerebral palsy. So I'm going to go ahead and look for a video that is highlighting children with this disability. This video right here, Meet Faith, is an excellent example. By showing this video, I'm making sure my students are ready for this content by adding a supplemental material. In the passage we read in the lesson, there is a section of text that utilizes personification. In order to understand the imagery, students need to know what two different types of clouds look like. While my students have plenty of personal experience with clouds, I don't anticipate that my students can recall these types of clouds to be able to differentiate them by name. Here, I add another supplementary material, a collection of photos of clouds to help bridge this understanding. Let's jump into Seesaw so I can show you where I found my cloud images. Here I am on Seesaw. I found this amazing resource already created for me within the community library. I made sure to favorite it by selecting the heart so it added to my library. Now I can edit and make the changes that I need. For example, this assignment currently does not have any audio attached. I'd be sure to add that audio before sharing it with my students. I also think this is a great resource to share with my PLC team. I'm going to be sure to add this to the district library by selecting the three dots, push Share Activity, and push Share next to Share to School and District Libraries. This allows any teacher in our district to easily find this resource within our district library. As I reach the Respond and Analyze section of my lesson plan, I know that I have a student who has a personal experience with a specific physical disability that's the focus in our excerpt. I'll prompt my student to share. Bringing in this personal experience of our student is another type of supplementary material and can help bring the specific disability into our classroom. It's important here to know your students and know who is willing to share personal information about themselves or their lives. I'm sure to check in with my students prior to the lesson. Asking them to share something this personal is challenging, so it's important that we know their comfort level. I'm also careful to give them time to consider their answer, and I don't ever expect an answer right on the spot. Notice how I intentionally take time to plan my supplemental materials. If I wait until I absolutely know my students' needs It is too late for timely interventions. When I anticipate my students' needs and add supplemental materials, I only added 10 minutes onto my original expected lesson time, and am now better able to ensure my lesson is accessible to all of my students. Our challenge for you this month is to add supplements to your lessons. If you're not sure where to start, consider using supplements from Discovery Education, just like I did.